Hello, guys. Welcome back to another edition of SEC Talk. Week number 6, conference play got going. It was a wild weekend in college football. So I'm here with my co-host yet again, Mr. Wade. How you doing tonight on this fine Tuesday night?
Pretty good. Good evening, everyone. Good to be back with you here. Week 7, you said?
Week 6 now.
6. Okay.
The
All right. Good.
halfway point is here.
I was really having to second guess myself there at 7. So 6 makes me feel a little bit better.
So we are officially at the halfway point here. It always flies by. So let's get right into tonight's show. Let's start off with the SEC teams in the AP Top 25 poll. We actually have some new faces, and we also have some movement as well. A new number one, the Alabama Crimson Tide, reclaimed their throne after a big win on the road in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Number two, Georgia, they fell a spot after they did win against Missouri, but they did have some struggles on Saturday. And then number 8, Tennessee. They're on the bye week, but they do get a test this weekend in Baton Rouge against LSU. And then number 9, Ole Miss defeated your Kentucky Wildcats. I know that you're not rooting for them, but you were high on
They were my
Kentucky.
adopted team.
Yes, absolutely. And then speaking of Kentucky, they fell a couple of spots to number 13 after the road loss to Ole Miss. And number 23, Mississippi State, and number 25, LSU are the new faces. And the two teams that you don't see anymore in the poll is Texas A&M after the loss to Mississippi State, and then Arkansas, the loss to Alabama. So we have a Georgia fan with us right here, late to the season show, but proud of you both for carrying on. Go Dogs! All right,
All
all right.
right.
Let's get into the reminder part of our show. If you are all of our fans, if you have any questions, feel free to leave us a comment. We'll do exactly what we've did with that comment that just popped up. So whenever we see your comments on here, we'll pop them up and we'll do a little pause during the show. So here's another one. Why isn't my other alma mater Vanderbilt ranked? LOL.
Well, Mr. Woods, I'm guessing that's you. I can't see the comments on my end because I'm screen sharing.
It is.
Vanderbilt, they got off to a hot start for you, Uncle D, but then they kind of reverted to their old ways. But they got a chance to make a statement against your other school here coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get right into it here with our SEC fantasy. We're gonna keep on rolling now to the week 5 recap. So SEC fantasy is presented by our friends in Houston, Texas, Buffalo Bayou Brewing Company. If you're always down there in Houston, definitely make sure to check them out. They got some good beer, plenty of good food as well, and a good time. Also, some good views of the city. You can see Minute Maid Park. You can see the Dynamos Stadium. You can pretty much see any stadium. Really beautiful city down there in Houston. So if you're ever around there, definitely go check out Buffalo Bayou Brewing Company. All right, let's get into the rules of SEC fantasy before we get into the recap. Pretty much one of each, one quarterback, one running back, a receiver, and a defense. And then, as always, our weekly rule, we cannot pick the same player back-to-back weeks. So if you were with us last week, Wade had a phenomenal SEC fantasy, over 500 yards. But this week, he falls back to reality with what you'll see here with 29 yards. So why don't you go ahead and go through your team?
Yeah, quite the fall from grace, going from as many yards as I had last week all the way down to 29 yards. But overall, it just nobody had that wow factor this week. Will Levis, he had a good game. He battled hard for Kentucky against Ole Miss, but he was limited to just 220 yards passing. He added a few on the ground. Kentucky did have your guy back at running back, Chris Rodriguez. So, a little bit of pressure was taken off Levis, and but he did well to keep him in the game. Almost won it on the final play. Got a touchdown taken back for offensive pass interference. So tough break for him. John Emery actually was not the LSU leading rusher, or he actually had, I think, the third most attempts behind Josh Williams. Ended up being the lead back, and then Jaden Daniels, as he usually does, ran the ball 10 or so times. So John Emery fell third in line for the Tigers with a respectable 42 yards. The Tigers, as many of y'all saw, couldn't get it done through the air against Auburn. and they had to rely on the rushing attack, but it was pretty balanced across the board. Um, Jalen Brooks got the week started off for me pretty well with 61 yards. Thursday night, his game got moved up because of Hurricane Ian, so he had a good game for the Gamecocks on Thursday against South Carolina State, 61 yards. And the Georgia defense, they didn't do quite as good as I needed them to in this one. I mean, 294 yards is nothing horrible, but with the offense not picking up the pace, I needed Georgia to, have one of their signature 150-yard efforts. But alas, they almost let up 300 yards. So I was lucky to stay in the positives in this one, just 29 yards. Let's see if Tyler can top that, and I think he will.
Yeah, that's good that none of us have gotten to the negatives yet. We usually see one by now, but if honestly we can go the whole season without being negatives, then this is going to be the best SEC fantasy year that we've been having in a while. So, as you mentioned, yes, I did beat Wade once again with 247 yards. Will Rogers is just Will Rogers. He had 329 yards and 3 touchdowns. The return of Chris Rodriguez, he had 72 yards and a touchdown. So a very good debut for the senior running back. And then Brock Bowers, the tight end for Georgia, he had 66 yards. He was the leading pass catcher for the Dogs on Saturday against Missouri. And South Carolina's defense, they did a terrific job against South Carolina State, 220 yards. So I'll take it. I wasn't really expecting them to go under 200, so I'll take this for sure. So I'll finish this week with 247. So with that, I get the first pick going into Week 6 SEC Fantasy Draft, and we have some talented pass catchers. We saw both of these two quarterbacks just a couple of weeks ago, Hendon Hooker and Anthony Richardson. Why don't you talk about Hooker's matchup against LSU?
Yeah, I had to go with the safe option here. There weren't too many favorable matchups this week. Of course, I was eligible to take Will Rogers and his matchup. But I opted to go with Hendon Hooker here. I know that the LSU defense has been playing pretty stout, but they did let up 337 yards passing to Robbie Ashford. So we all know Hendon Hooker is a superior talent. And I'm not saying it's, over for the Tigers, but I would say Hooker is going to have a good game regardless of how that game turns out. So if he could eclipse 250 yards passing for me, I would feel pretty good in this fantasy matchup. But this is kind of one of those between these two guys. I mean, you almost wish the rushing yards counted as well because they are dual threat. But, we like to keep it simple here on SEC Fantasy. Keeps the math nice and easy. So, with that, I'll let you talk about Richardson. I mean, he's also very much a dual threat.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish we could count their rushing yards in this one, but sadly, we only count the passing yards. But I think Anthony Richardson is starting to find his groove in the passing game. He has a cannon of arms. So I think the Missouri matchup, I know that Missouri played Georgia close, but this one is in Gainesville. It's at the Swamp. I think that Richardson really does well at home versus on the road. I mean, shoot, this last road game, he had over 450 yards passing against the Tennessee defense. So I'm not expecting that, but if he can get to at least like 250, 300, then I'll take it. So I'm going to go with Richardson, but I think that Hooker, even with a loss, could have a fantastic day on Saturday afternoon. So now let's go on to the running backs to see who we have, see if we have any new faces. And actually we do. We see the return of Jahmyr Gibbs. I took him, I believe, either in week 1 or week 2. And then now you have Quinshon Judkins, who has quickly become an RB1 for Ole Miss.
Yeah, and Zach Evans has had a good year too. We saw him here on SEC Fantasy in week number 2. And we'll probably see him again. I mean, Ole Miss, we've seen it for years. They have a 2-back system. Actually, when we covered Zach Evans in week 2, we said, wow, this is really weird that Ole Miss is going with a 1-back system. Well, enter Quinshon Judkins. He's here, and he's here to stay. He's actually, as you've alluded to, kind of becoming the go-to back, although Evans will still get upwards of 10 to 15 carries a game. But Judkins has really made the most of the opportunity. He's gone for, I believe, over 70 yards in every game since week 1. And coming off a 100-yard effort this past Saturday. So I look for him to continue that, no problem, here this week. And I'm just riding the momentum.
Yeah, very favorable matchup that he has this weekend against a Vanderbilt rush defense that ranks at the bottom of the league. And I'm going to go Jameer Gibbs. He just had over 200 yards rushing against the Arkansas team, and this week they get Texas A&M. A&M, on the defense has really been struggling the past couple of weeks. So I'm going to ride the momentum here, go with Gibbs, and trust him because I know that Judkins is going to put up at least 100 yards. So I feel like going with Gibbs is pretty much just a must in this case. So now from the running backs, let's go on to the pass catchers. We see Ra Thomas. We usually see Jaden Wally, but Wally, has been having a down year this season. Seems that cornerbacks are starting to double team him. So you're going for Ra, and I'm going
Yeah,
Malik Neighbors.
I really had to take a look at this Mississippi State wide receiving room because, Mekhi Polk ended up going to the NFL a year early. It hasn't really worked out. He's on the practice squad for the Ravens. I thought Jaden Wally actually did the same because I just really hadn't heard much about him this year, but, he's still healthy and he's on Mississippi State. But Ra Thomas has really taken over as wide receiver number 1 for the Bulldogs, and then they got guys in the slot um, that are really having good years as well. So, it's hard to say. They could spread the ball out a little bit, but I'm going to go with the most consistent guy and the most consistent pass offense, and that's Ra Thomas.
Yeah, Thomas has been very consistent. I'm going to go Malik Neighbors. We've seen 3 LSU wide receivers so far in SEC fantasy. We saw Jeray Jenkins, Kayshon Boutte, and now we're going with Malik Neighbors. I just feel like if LSU is going to win the game, one of their receivers are going to have to have a big game. I mean, Jane Daniels can't have 80 passing yards again. So I think that Malik Neighbors is going to be the one. Jane Daniels looks, to Malik Neighbors on pretty much every route that he runs. So I think that Neighbors is in for a big game. He had a big game against Mississippi State, but in Auburn, he wasn't really much of a factor. So I think both of these receivers are going to be in for a big game. So now let's go on to the defense. You're going to go with old reliable with Alabama's defense. I'm going back to Ole Miss's defense. So no new
Yeah.
defenses this week, but we're just rolling with the old bloods.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to take Ole Miss, but you snagged them with the number 1 overall pick. So, yeah, there weren't too many obvious
Yeah.
candidates, so I had to go with Alabama. I mean, they are playing a top 25 matchup with Texas A&M. Or actually, did A&M fall at the polls?
Yeah, they failed the polls.
So, but still, a good opponent in Texas A&M. But the offense is just really holding that team back, and Alabama's defense, to me, is getting better as they go along. So, had to go with the Tide.
Yeah, Alabama's defense outside of Ole Miss looks the safest, especially with A&M's offense coming to town. I'm going to go with Ole Miss against Vanderbilt. I think, I really have faith in this Ole Miss defense, especially what I saw against them in Kentucky. Like we mentioned, Will Levis was on a streak of 300-yard passing games, and he only got 220. So I'm going to go Ole Miss's defense. I think that they're going to do a good job against Vanderbilt offense. That's been struggling, ever since week 1 and week 2. They really haven't been scoring much as of late. So we will see how these defense does, and we'll tune in next week to how we did on SEC Fantasy Week number 6. So let's continue on with our Week 5 recaps here in the SEC. So we're going to go to our first game. Like Wade mentioned, we had a Thursday night game due to Hurricane Ian blowing through the state of South Carolina and Florida. But South Carolina was able to get it done. It was a minimal crowd, like expected. Not many people wanted to go out there before it was very windy and then very rainy during Thursday night.
I was on I-26 rolling through Columbia when this was going on. It was windy.
But South Carolina, this was pretty much just a given. 50-10. This was definitely needed after a 2-game losing skid to start off SEC play. But you see there, Marshawn Lloyd, he continues to have a big game. 80 yards on 11 carries and a touchdown. So definitely good for South Carolina. I believe they will be on the bye. Actually, no, they play Kentucky on the road. That's a team that they've been struggling against. So we'll see if the Gamecocks can, get through some demons with Kentucky, because it feels like Kentucky has been having South Carolina's number. So a quick recap. That was pretty much a given that South Carolina was going to win that one. SC State just outmatched in that one. But this was our game of the week here in week number 5. Number 7, Kentucky at number 14, Ole Miss. Chet actually won this pick. Both you and I picked Kentucky, but in the end, Ole Miss won 22-19. And this was a crazy game. Ole Miss was up 14-0, and then Kentucky storms all the way back thanks to Chris Rodriguez punching it into the end zone. And then the end of the game was just wacky. Kentucky's last 4 drives resulted in 4 fumbles. So if you're going to do that, then you're not going to win the football game. So very sloppy for Kentucky, but you got to give credit to Ole Miss defense for stepping up.
Yeah, absolutely. This was probably the only game I watched more than 2 quarters of this weekend. So I'm going to go ahead and give my opinion on it because I don't know how much value I'll provide down the stretch here. But for those of you that don't know, I was traveling all weekend for my engagement shower, so it wasn't without good cause. But yeah, Ole Miss, I mean, like you said, they got out in front and kind of looked like you and I were, made a head scratcher of a pick, but then that Kentucky team that we all know did come back in this one. And, I just thought on one of those 4 drives, they would find a way to just take the lead, and it looked like they did with the pass to Devin Key in the corner of the end zone. It was kind of a questionable offensive pass interference call, but there definitely was a push off, and it was probably warranted. But then on the very next play, the strip sack, and it caused Will Levis to, dislocate his finger. So not only do you lose, but you kind of have that lingering into this week, making sure that he can go through all of his progressions and, everything that I've heard says he'll play this weekend against South Carolina, but, not what you want to have to deal with your all-star quarterback, not getting a full week of practice. So, it's definitely not over for Kentucky. There's still everything to play for in the East, but they're going to have to win out from here, including against Georgia.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a tough road for both of these teams going forward. So we'll go on to the next conference game here in week number 5, and that was Alabama going on the road to Arkansas here. Arkansas did their red out, and Alabama in this one got up 28-0. But the main storyline was Bryce Young going down for injury, and that brought in the backup quarterback for Alabama. Which, boy, man, he's built like Derrick Henry, and he
Oh my gosh.
he almost scored a touchdown, but Arkansas was able to storm back off of a wacky Alabama punt that went backwards, and then Arkansas was able to recover an onside kick. But nonetheless, Alabama and Jahmyr Gibbs was able to storm back. Jahmyr Gibbs, like you see there, had 206 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. So Arkansas's defense continues to struggle. They gave up 23 to Texas A&M's offense last week, and now Alabama, after that Texas game, is definitely back to being themselves. So that was definitely a wake-up call for them, but a great win for Alabama on the road.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, backup quarterback Milroe comes in, and they didn't even skip a beat. If anything, they're more physical. I mean, it looked like they had Derrick Henry at
Yeah,
quarterback.
they had 2 running backs back there pretty much.
Yeah, he looks impressive. I think there's going to be a lot of designed quarterback runs for as long as he's in the game. But, I think as he gets more comfortable, he'll be able to spread it around and throw it. And, he should have a good chance to do that this week against A&M.
Yeah, definitely. We will have to watch the news to see if Bryce Young is going to be able to go against Texas A&M this weekend. But speaking of Texas A&M, they went on the road to Mississippi State. A&M was reeling off of a big win in Arlington against Arkansas. Mississippi State coming off a win against Bowling Green. And this game was not close, ladies and gentlemen. 42-24. Mississippi State's defense was the story in this one. Just A&M and Max Johnson did not have anything going. I mean, A&M's offense in the past couple of weeks, you can arguably the season is Devin Achane. Really,
Yeah.
anyone outside of Devin Achane hasn't really done anything for A&M's offense. But Mississippi State and Will Rogers got the job done. 329 yards and 3 touchdowns. We all picked the Bulldogs. We were all correct. But really, after Mississippi State was able to block that field goal and return it for a touchdown, that was all she wrote. A&M wasn't going to be able to score more than 20. They did score 24, but that was a garbage time touchdown. State was up 42-17 before that. So definitely impressive win for Mississippi State, as we saw the AP poll voters voted them into the top 25. So this was a huge win for Mississippi State. Now 1-1 in SEC play.
Yeah, Mississippi State really looks impressive, and you gotta wonder, what's this say about LSU's defense that they were able to really limit this offense and hold them to what they did. So, or maybe it was the wake up call that the Bulldogs needed. But either way, this team looks great, and Texas A&M is just not going to have the offense to contend. I mean, Devin Achane is playing his heart out. He's kind of like the Christian McCaffrey for that team. I mean, he's going to be their leading receiver and rusher.
I'm
And
pretty sure
pretty
he
soon he's
returns
gonna
the
have to throw
kickoffs
it,
too, so he does
and he
really
does.
everything.
Yeah, I mean, the poor guy. I mean, he's got to be one of the top 3 or 4 running back prospects in this year's draft. I mean, you just hope that he can manage the workload.
Yeah, he definitely might be making a case for a first round draft pick, because there's definitely, the quarterback class is great, but I feel like the running back class is going to take a step down from the last couple of years. So now let's go on to the Tiger Bowl here in Jordan Hare Stadium. And this was just a typical LSU Auburn game. I mean, LSU was the heavy favorite, the 9.5, but I was kind of suspect of that line, because I know that Auburn, just barely escaped against Missouri in overtime. But Auburn at home is a different breed. Like you mentioned, Robbie Ashford played a whale of a game on his 20th birthday. But this game started off scary. Sevyn Banks went down with a head injury. He went to the hospital. He was alert and okay. So that's good news for him. Definitely prayers go out to Sevyn Banks. But LSU just loves to make it difficult on themselves, don't they? They were down
Oh yeah.
17-0 in this game. And then LSU with BJ Ojolari was able to get the sack, and Jay Ward picked it up for a scoop and score. That was definitely needed to create some momentum, as LSU was able to get it to 14-17 before the half. And then your guy, John Emery, had the lone touchdown in the second half with his big touchdown run there, of 20-yard run. The Auburn defender grabbed him by the face mask, but he high stepped into the end zone. So another win for LSU, as they now win 4 straight after that one loss on the road in New Orleans against Florida State.
Yeah, I mean, they did what they needed to get the win. The defense carried in this one, leading directly to one score, and then after a slow start, pitching a shutout. So kind of a wacky game, tale of two halves, if you will. 17-0 and then 21-0. So crazy.
Yeah, definitely crazy in this one. So we have 2 more games here in the Week 5 slate before we get into Week 6. And this was probably the most surprising of the outcome here. I mean, Georgia was a heavy favorite in this one, almost a 25-point favorite in this one. But man, Missouri led the whole entire game before Georgia's offense finally got it going. Kendall Milton was able to get a late touchdown to put Georgia up in this one. So, I mean, Georgia, this was really the first game that they faced adversity. They were down, I believe, 13-3 at one point, 16-6. It was just like a field goal game in the first half. And then Georgia's offense finally woke up in the second half, and they were able to get it going. But you got to give credit to Missouri. Especially after a heartbreaking loss of last week. And their kicker, Mevis, missed a 24-yard field goal last week. And now this week, he hits like 4 for 4, and 2 of those were over 50-yard field goals. So that's the beauty of college football, ladies and gentlemen. But
Inconsistent.
got to give credit for Missouri's fighting. But does this concern you, Georgia?
Yeah, 2 weeks in a row that we've seen Georgia struggle, and this time the poll voters believed it and bumped them down to number 2. This has everything written for a trap game. I mean, if you're Georgia, you'd rather kind of get this game out of the way, at 2:30 or something, and then get back on to Athens. But it was a late kickoff, SEC Network game, and you knew that Missouri was going to bring their best effort. So I think Georgia's just kind of working through some kinks on offense. They've had a couple of wide receivers come back from injury, and I just don't think they're clicking. The defense is remaining pretty good. And, offensively, they put up almost 400 total yards, and they only let up 290. So, I mean, Georgia just didn't really cash in on some opportunities, but the ball was moving. So, I say they'll continue to get better, and if they can have these hiccups without losing, then um, nothing's going to stop them.
Yeah, I know that Missouri has lost these past couple of weeks, but I mean, ever since they got blown out by Kansas State, I feel like this team has been improving. And like I mentioned, there's no moral victories in college football. I mean, but I don't think that anyone saw them keeping it close against Georgia and keeping it close against Auburn. So I think that this Missouri's team is definitely going to be an upward battle here. I don't think that the wins are going to pile up for them this year, but I think that starting next year, we're going to see this Missouri team really shine. So. Like I mentioned, we have one more game here. This was our Sunday morning game, another game that got moved due to Hurricane Ian. And the Florida Gators welcome the Eastern Washington Eagles. Eastern Washington had a long flight to Gainesville, Florida, but Florida dominated this one from start to finish, 52-17. You see there, Anthony Richardson. He only played a half in this one. He had 240 yards and 2 touchdowns. So this was just Florida. This was a bounce back win for them after losing to Tennessee on the road. So this was definitely needed before they welcome Missouri to Gainesville. So that is our games for week 5. Let's see how we did with our picks. And our upset specialist takes the cake in this one at 10-1. He would have been undefeated if he wasn't a bozo and, didn't pick against Alabama like he does. But 10-1, still respectable for first place. I finished with second, 9-2, and you finished with 8-3. The main offsetter, you picked Oklahoma over TCU, and that did not go well.
No, it did
if
not.
you watched that game. So
I did. I saw the score.
yeah. So let's dive in down to Week 6 Pick'em. So this is brought to you by Norse Beard. So you can head on over to www.norsebeards.com and use promo code OCS for 25% off your Beardsman product. So if you're growing out your beard, Norse Beards is definitely for you. All right, let's pop on now to Week 6 games in the SEC, starting with the morning kickoff in Death Valley between the top 25 matchup here, number 8 Tennessee at number 25 LSU. You know me, I've been high on this Tennessee team. This is an explosive offense, but they do have some weaknesses on the defensive side. They let up so many yardage against Pittsburgh and Florida, but they were able to win the game. So this might be a high-scoring battle here on Sunday morning. So who you got between the Vols and the Tigers?
Yes, I'm curious to see where your allegiance lies. Obviously the LSU homer, but we've been hyping up Tennessee since July, so kind of hard to jump off the train now. But yeah, I think that this game is going to be really close. I wish it was at night for LSU's sake. I think that would kind of tilt the things into favor for LSU. But as it stands at 11 a.m., I think that both teams out a little sluggish on offense. And I could see LSU kind of falling into a hole that they can't get out of. And I think Hendon Hooker will step it up and make a big play late after the Tigers rally. Give me Tennessee in this one. It's going to be a heartbreaker, but it's going to be close and a little bit lower scoring than people think. I'm going to go Tennessee 34, LSU 31.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting quarterback battle. I mean, Hendon Hooker, I feel like has an advantage in the passing game. I think that LSU side, you got to start off fast. You can't get down 17-0, 13-0, because that's what LSU has done the past 2 SEC games. They got down 13-0 against Mississippi State, and then they got down 17-0. So you can't really afford that against a Tennessee team that would be able to put up points. So you pretty much, honestly, I hate to say, you got to turn this into a shootout probably for LSU if you want a shot at it. So the passing game has to get going. Jaden Daniels, like I told you, if he gets 80 passing yards again, then LSU is not going to win this game, and they might even get blown out if he gets 80 yards passing. But I think that LSU on the defensive side, they have an advantage there. I think that Tennessee's secondary is where you can beat them, and that's why it's so important for Jaden Daniels in this passing game to get going. It's at home, so I'm going to go with the Tigers in this one. I think they get it done. I picked LSU to beat Tennessee. Like I mentioned, I'm very high on this Volunteers team, so I think that this game can go either way. But since it's at home, it's at 11 a.m. I know that, but I think that the crowd will still be in it. We'll have plenty of time to drink before the game, I'm sure. So I'm going to go LSU 35,
Little Bailey's in the coffee.
Tennessee 31 in this one. So let's see what Chet picks, our upset specialist, and he's going to go with an upset here, going with the Tigers at home. So you're the lone Tennessee Vols, so you have an opportunity to pick up a game if the orange and white. Actually, they're wearing the smoky grays this weekend, so interested to see what LSU does in this game. So let's go on to the next game. here in the SEC in week number 6. And it is another conference battle. We're going to see a lot of conference battles going forward. We have Arkansas coming off the loss against Alabama. It doesn't get any easier. They have to go to Starkville with the Cowbells, number 23 Mississippi State. So you're going to go with the Hogs or going to go with the Dogs at home?
I like it. I like it. I'm going to have to
Hogs or
stick with the
Dogs?
momentum here. I mean, Arkansas, we were kind of thinking they would at least split between Texas A&M and Alabama. They went 0 for 2, and Mississippi State got better over that time. So, yeah, I think they go 0 for 3 in that stretch, and they're not out the woods yet. They'll still have to play LSU, as well as I guess they already played their crossover game. So, LSU and Missouri. So I guess it does get a little bit easier. But regardless, you're playing Mississippi State at their prime. So I don't think it looks good for the Hogs.
Yeah, definitely doesn't look good as all for the Hogs as well. I mean, this Arkansas defense, like I alluded, has really been on the reels here. I think that Arkansas's offense definitely won't be able to hang around with Mississippi State. I expect this one to be close. So this game has always been close in the past couple of years, but I trust Mississippi State at home and their defense over Arkansas and KJ Jefferson. I think they'll get it done. It will be a close game, but I'm going to go with the Bulldogs at home in this one over Arkansas. Let's see if we get a clean sweep here, as Chet will also pick Mississippi
Worked
State.
last week.
So, yeah, it worked last week. So let's see if it works again here in week number 6. So let's go on now to a SEC East bout here between Missouri and Florida. Missouri is, coming off of those 2 losses, but they've really played teams close as of late. And Florida coming off of that drubbing against Eastern Washington. So you're going to go with the Tigers for an upset, or going to go with the Gators defending their home turf?
I'm playing the upset specialist this week. I'm going to go with Missouri.
All right, I like it.
I'm going with probability. I mean, Missouri should have won at least one of the last 2 games, and they lost both of them. So I think that fate falls in their favor this weekend against Florida. I know it's on the road, but Florida, they've been kind of up and down, and I think Missouri's going to catch them just kind of off guard. And there's probably a lot of pent-up aggression for the last 2 losses. And, with them hanging in there with Georgia, I think they got enough talent to pull off a surprise attack here and upset Florida.
I don't know what you put in your coffee this morning, but you sure are picking a lot of upsets this week. So we will see if it works out for you. But I do like that Missouri pick. I think that this Missouri team is very young, but I think that they have the talent to really surprise some people in the SEC. But I'm going to go with the Gators at home. I have Anthony Richardson, so I feel like I kind of have to pick Florida in this one. And I think that if Richardson's going to have a good game, then Florida's got to win this game. But I think, this could be a high-scoring battle. I think that Florida's defense, the last time we saw them against the explosive offense, it was against Tennessee, and they gave up 38. So I think that this could be the winner. Will probably get it to the low 30s. I'll say like 31-28, something like that. This game is always close. Missouri, I think that will be ready for this. They are coming off an emotional loss, so that will definitely be challenging. But good thing for Missouri, this one's in the afternoon, so it's not like typical swamp at night, but still be a raucous crowd. So I'm going to go with the Gators at home. And Chet, let's see if he goes with the upset, and he does not. So this could be another opportunity for you to pick the game. So Wade's either going to be at the top of the standings this week or at the bottom, but we will have to see. So let's go on down to the South's oldest rivalry here. This is the 2:30 game here at Auburn at number 2 Georgia. And folks, you are not blinking when you see this point spread. Georgia is a 30-point spread at this one. I feel like that's way too much. If I'm a bettor, I would probably take Auburn this one. Usually rivalry games, the underdog always covers. I mean, Georgia coming off 2 weeks struggling.
They didn't even beat Missouri by 5.
Yeah, so I think that I might have to sprinkle a little money on Auburn. But are you going to go with Auburn, another upset? Are you going to go with the Dogs defending their home turf?
All right, I did. I am inclined for an upset this week, but I didn't have a compelling case from Auburn in this one.
All right.
I'm going to go with Georgia. But I do like Auburn on the betting side of things.
Yeah.
I might investigate that and see if I got a free bet voucher from DraftKings.
Yeah, I might have to do that as well. Join you for that. But I'm going to go with Georgia at home. I do think that Auburn covers. I don't see this one being that big of a blowout. I mean, I think that, Robbie Ashford did a pretty good job against a really good LSU defense. So I think that if he can continue his momentum for the past couple of weeks, I think that this Auburn, team, especially, they get their running game going. I think that their defense, has shown that they have talent as well. So I think, this could be like a in the 20s type of game. But I am going to go with Georgia at home. I'm going to give them the 28 to 20 game. I think that Auburn, they're really going to play this one close. So I think, this is a rivalry game. Auburn wants to beat them. Georgia wants to beat them. But I have Georgia in the end winning this one between the hedges. And Chet is going to stay away from the upsets this week, it seems like. He's going all chalk so far, going with the dogs. So we might have to deem you the upset specialist this week if I don't
I'm
see any
taking over
upsets
for the week.
soon. But we'll see if we see one here with number 9 Ole Miss go on the road to Vanderbilt. We will see Ole Miss. Let's see if they can, get another win. And, they are in the top 10. I'm sure that, their players know that. I'm sure Lane Kiffin knows that as well. So can they go on the road and beat Vanderbilt in this matchup?
I think they will. I mean, this team looks pretty consistent. They're still trying to figure out some things on offense, but they run a pretty balanced attack, and they can really run the ball on just about anybody. So I don't see Vanderbilt stopping that trend. And the defense, I think the defense has been a real bright spot for Ole Miss. So I look for them to have another tune-up game here. I think they'll win this one 38-10.
Yeah, I think that Ole Miss is going to make a statement in this one. I mean, we were really high on Vanderbilt for the first couple of weeks. Then after Wake Forest, we kind of just left them in the dust. That's not really anything for Vanderbilt. They're 3-2. I think that's still a good record for this one. We'll see if they can surprise some people. I think that their defense will be overmatched in the run game. Look for Junkins and Evans to both go over 100 yards. I think that Vanderbilt's defense is just going to be 2-K with that rush attack. So I'm going to go with Ole Miss. I agree with your type of score. I'll go 42-17. I think that Vanderbilt will be able to score on the offensive side, but I'm going to go Ole Miss on the road. And Chet's going to go once again 2-0 for the Mississippi schools. That's as many streaks as he's had for the state of Mississippi. So
you might be homesick.
Yeah. You might be wanting to go home. So we'll see if there's any more upsets in store as we go now to Lexington. As we'll see if Wade, continues on his bandwagon for the Kentucky Wildcats after Ole Miss loss, or will, he jump off that bandwagon and go back to his home state of South Carolina. So South Carolina, number 13, Kentucky, like I alluded to, Kentucky dominates this series. But will this be the Gamecocks' time to shine? Who you got?
I am jumping off like that car is on fire.
Oh, my gosh. Already?
Going with the Gamecocks. And this doesn't say anything about my Kentucky bandwagon per se, but I think Kentucky's going to be a little butthurt about the loss, against Ole Miss. The quarterback's a little dinged up. South Carolina has been incredibly bad against Kentucky the last 6 years, and I think they just break out of the curse. I mean, kick them while they're down kind of mentality. I don't love that it's at Kentucky. I might look like a moron for this pick, but you know what? Why not? Risk-free. I'm going to put it out there. South Carolina puts it together. Spencer Rattler finally, plays like he should. And I think that if he can limit this to just one turnover, only one, no more, South Carolina will win a close one. Me and my grandfather talked about this one, and it kind of hyped up my South Carolina fandom over the weekend. And, what the heck? I think they get it done.
I like this pick. I think, you're not really going to look like a moron, win or loss. I think that this game will ultimately could be close. I think that South Carolina's offense is going to be reeling off that win against SC State. They really needed that. I think that SC State really came at the right time after, a drubbing of Georgia. And then I think on Kentucky's side, this comes at a very good time. You go back home and try to win a game after you lost, one of your sloppiest games of the season. I mean, Kentucky looked awful on Saturday morning, but I'm not jumping off the train just yet. I'm going to go with Kentucky in this one. I don't really trust South Carolina's defense quite yet. We'll see if they surprise me. But I think that Will Levis is going to get back on track, and then the return of Chris Farad is going to be – I think this is going to be the battle of two good running backs. I mean, South Carolina's Marshawn Lloyd has been doing good as well. So I would not be surprised if both of those combined for 200 yards rushing. But I am going to go Kentucky, go with close game, 27-24. I think that Spencer Rattler, you finally see him have a good game on the road. But I think that Kentucky at home is going to be too much for them in the end. And Chet's going to go with the Kentucky Wildcats. So once again, we see a game that you can pick up or lose. So like I mentioned, you're either going to be at the top of the standings or at the bottom. So
yeah, mathematically, it's impossible for me to finish second. So
yeah, it is. So we go on to the finale. This is the CBS Saturday night game now. In the preseason, this was a very hyped up game. We saw Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban go after each other. Well, this game has really lost some lackluster. The preseason, this would have been a top 6 matchup, and now A&M already has 2 losses on the season to App State and now to Mississippi State. Alabama still undefeated and now number 1. So do you have this one even being close in this Saturday night game?
Nah, they could have just put this one on at 11 a.m. and given everybody something to watch at brunch, but alas, they chose to make it the primetime game. So I don't know. I guess good for Alabama. They get to sleep in for once, and I think they'll drub Texas A&M, backup quarterback or not. Pretty much just have to score more than 20 points, and you're good to go.
Yeah, I feel like Alabama has been marking this one on their calendar since last year. This is going to be a revenge game. Like, if you don't remember last year, A&M won on a last-second field goal. It was like,
and they were unranked.
Yeah, and they were unranked at the time. It's a different quarterback. It was Zach Calzada at that time. Now it's Max Johnson. And, Max Johnson played Alabama, close, but A&M's offense is just inept at this rate. They won't be able to keep it close. I have Alabama winning this one 42-14. I think Alabama covers. I'm going to go with the Tide at home. They continue to roll. And Chet's going to go with Alabama. Wow, he actually picks Alabama for one. So he's smart with his picks.
He doesn't like Texas A&M.
He's smart with his picks this week. I mean, I have not seen any upset so far, but we will see if that changes when we go outside the conference. So let's do that right now. And that's presented by Righteous Felon Craft Jerky. If you're a fan of beef jerky, then Righteous Felon is the place to be here. www.righteousfelon.com is the website that you can go to, and you can use promo code OCSN for 15% off the best beef jerky around. And you know what else is the best beef jerky around is the hype around this Kansas Jayhawk team as they will welcome home number 17 TCU. TCU coming off of a drubbing at home against Oklahoma. Kansas squeaking out a win 14-11. I was wishing that was a scoregami, but that wasn't. It was just a typical score that you see in college football. But Kansas was able to win a defensive battle. So he got in this one between the Horned Frogs and Kansas. The winner honestly controls their destiny in making it to Arlington.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought we would have a top 20 matchup here with 2 undefeated teams with TCU and Kansas. But here we are, and I'm going to go with TCU because this is a very unfamiliar situation for all around. And I don't know. It just feels like TCU is a better program, I guess, but it is at Kansas, and they have looked really good on offense. But I just kind of have to go with what I know. And TCU looked really impressive against Oklahoma.
Now, I think that definitely is a question mark that will be answered. I mean, this is the first time that we've seen this Kansas team in the national spotlight. Not only their ranked, College Game Day is going over there, and it is an 11 o'clock kickoff, so they better be ready, better have their morning coffee. And I really love this TCU team. I think that this will be an explosive offense. I think that this could be, one of those shootouts that we see again to the 30s. You have 2 talented quarterbacks. You have Duggan on one side of TCU, who just had a whale of a game against Oklahoma, and then Kansas has Jalen Daniels, not Jaden Daniels, that we see at LSU. I'm going to go with the Jayhawks. So, I mean,
all right.
Why not? I mean, we've I know that way to not have, brought up Kansas, literally every season of how bad they are. I think that they finally get the statement win, and I would not be surprised if they get up into, the top 15 range with this win. So, I know that TCU is actually the road favorite in this one. Kansas is the home underdog. So I think that they're going to take that. I think that Kansas will ultimately beat TCU at home. And Chet's going to ride with the Jayhawks as well. Right. So you're the lone Horned Frog once again. So it seems like every time you're just on the island of these picks.
Well, if one of my crazy upsets like Missouri or South Carolina doesn't pan out,
this will balance it out.
I could get a game back with the taking the favorite here as well as the Tennessee game. So actually, I'll opened it back up to where I could.
Yeah,
finish in the middle.
We'll see if we have any more openings through the door in case your upsets do not work out. If you go to the top game in the Pac-12, this is a really interesting matchup here. I mean, Utah, the one loss coming at in the season opener against Florida. UCLA, though, I mean, man, what a showing that they had on Friday night against a Washington team that was undefeated. So this is a top 18 matchup, Utah, UCLA. Whoever wins this one controls their destiny as well in the Pac-12. All the hype has been about USC. So I think whoever wins this one, we'll see them in Vegas in the Pac-12 championship. So you got between the Bruins and the Utes.
Yeah, the Pac-12 is really cool because they're the first conference to allow the top two teams to face off. So neither team would be technically eliminated with a loss, but it also wouldn't impact the Pac-12 South, if you will. But I'm going to go with the preseason hype around Utah. I mean, Florida is a talented team. It was at Florida. If that's Utah's only loss, I don't even know if that holds them out of the playoffs. So they still have a lot to play for. And Chip Kelly's bunch looks good. They upset Washington in the Rose Bowl last Friday, which was a big win. And they get another home matchup here. But I just think that Utah overall is a little bit more talented with Cam Rising. Although you can't discount Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He's been there for 4 years, maybe 5 years, and plenty of experience in this one. But I think Utah edges him out.
Yeah, I mean, two experienced quarterback battle here. I mean, Utah's been on a heater ever since that Florida game. I feel like they've just been blowing everyone out. And me, I was really high on this Utah team. I had them in the playoff. But like you, jumping off the Kentucky bandwagon, I'm jumping off the Utah bandwagon. I'm actually going to go with the home team here. Go Chip Kelly squad. Go with UCLA. They really impressed me against Washington. Washington was the team that I really liked. I had a big win against Michigan State. So I think that this is going to be a big battle here. I think that UCLA's defense is going to be able to match Utah's defense in this one. So I'm going to go with the Bruins at home in the Rose Bowl and get a big win. Like you mentioned, Dorian Thompson-Robinson will be a big part for UCLA to win this game. And Chet is going to go with the Bruins. So this is another one that you're on the island once again. So this could be a game that we look back at that could open the door for you to get first place in the rankings here. So we will see. Definitely a lot of discrepancy. This is like the most discrepancy I've seen on the show.
I know. So it makes for a fun show.
Definitely like this show so far. So we'll see if we have any more. So the next is another big game, the Pac-12. Washington State, this has been a team. Their one loss was against Oregon, 44-41 at home, but they've been really good, really solid program that they got building over there. And they head on the road to number 6 USC. USC got up to number 6, and they pretty much just been leveled. They beat Arizona State and Oregon State the previous two meetings. So you got between the Cougars and the Trojans.
I want to pull another upset here.
I honestly thought about it.
If it was in Washington, yes, maybe. But I'm going to go with Washington State not getting the upset here. I'm going to go with Southern Cal. We talked to Ross Dellinger way back in August, and he said, look out for USC. He thinks they'll be a playoff team, so they're on that track right now.
Yeah, so far so good for this USC team, excuse me. But yeah, I almost thought about going with Washington State, pulling off the upset. I think that their offense will be able to score, but I just think that Caleb Williams is going to be too much for their defense. I mean, they gave up 44 points to Oregon. I think that it could I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I wouldn't be surprised it's like a 44-38 type of game, something like that. But it's at home and go with USC. Just too much offense for the Trojans in this one. So let's see if Chet's going to go the opposite way. He does not. So all clean sweep here for the Troy. So let's go on to the final game here outside the SEC. It is the top ACC game here. No Clemson for like the first 3 weeks of the season. Clemson did get a big win. I think that they're pretty much a lock right now for the ACC championship. They already beat NC State. They already beat Wake Forest. So really like the only games that they have in front of them are like Florida State, Miami, and Notre Dame. Do you really see any of those teams beating them? Probably not. So congratulations for Clemson to making it to the ACC championship. So Florida State, NC State, Florida State obviously coming off of a loss against Wake Forest, NC State coming off a loss to Clemson. So this is a big game. Like I just mentioned, I think pretty much, I think that doesn't matter who wins this one. Clemson's already in it. I want to get your thoughts on that, but he also had winning the game.
I'm going to go with NC State in this one. Florida State has had a pretty good year, but North Carolina State hung in there all game against Clemson. They get to return to home. I think they get it done. It will be close. Might even go to overtime.
Yeah, I could see this one being close. I mean, we have another great quarterback battle here. We have Jordan Travis for Florida State, and then we have NC State Devin Leary, who got a really lot of hype here. Was on the preseason first team All American, the ACC. So I think that the defenses here, I think that they'll be able to match each other as well. I think this is a very even game. Like you mentioned, I would not even be surprised if this game went in overtime if it were to happen. But I'm going to go with the Wolfpack at home. And I was looking at their logo. Doesn't that look like a crock pot on the Wolfpack's head with NC State on the?
I can't unsee it now.
I know.
All right, I think that is a worthy point.
That's what I was thinking. Like this,
it's
just like
bring the tailgate with you.
Yeah, he's bringing the tailgate on his head. So I mean, NC State fans, if that's how you do it, then we might have to go to a Wolfpack game. So Chet's going to go with NC State as well. So I'm sure Florida State fans love to see this, a clean sweep for the Wolfpack in this one. So that's our games for week 6. We'll see how we do now. So our Hot Topic segment is brought to you by our new affiliate here is Fanatics. I'll go ahead and bring up the link for you. So we are now partnered by Fanatics, thanks to Old City Sports Network that we're a part of. You can use our link right here. It's www.fanatics.93in6tx.net. I know it's weird, but then /scramble. I'm looking right now. Today's code is Apple. It's all uppercase APPLE, and you can save up to 65% off site-wide. So Fanatics is a very good site. I know that Wade and I use it more than we probably should, but definitely for the SEC season ramping up, definitely get your gear right now. So go to some hot topics, and we got a lot of injuries already in the SEC. As you see here, literally 4 topics are about.
You should have called this segment the injury report.
The injury report. Oh well, I guess the injury report is really considered the hot topics on this one. So we'll go to the Plains here. Auburn linebacker Ike Luata. And quarterback Zach Calzada is going to be out for the season to have surgery. So the quarterback room for Auburn is slowly dwindling down. We already saw TJ Finley out with injury and Zach Calzada. So do you have trust in their freshman Robbie Ashford going forward for Auburn?
Yeah, I mean, I think he could have been the guy that ended up winning the job, even if everyone was healthy. But here he is, found himself in this situation. And I think it's good for him because he doesn't feel like he has those guys lingering over him, like it's no longer a quarterback competition. It's either going to be him or the true freshman walk-on. So, yeah, TJ Finley's not done for the year, and he probably will be ready to go in another week or two. But by then, I would think Ashford's kind of solidified that he's going to be the quarterback this year. And if anything, he can just keep developing and be the guy for next year. So this actually might not be a good thing for Auburn, but it might solve a problem. That room was a little bit overcrowded, and Ashford, to me, seems to have the most potential and athleticism. So I wouldn't be too worried about Calzada being out for the year.
And we'll go on to the next hot topic, which was headed, to the Plains here once again. This happened at Auburn's Jordan-Hare Stadium. LSU Sevyn Banks is going to be out for 5 to 6 weeks with spinal cord bruise. So Sevyn Banks is, I just hate to see it. He's just coming off of an injury, and he gets injured again. So 5 to 6 weeks pretty much puts him out of the season. So hopefully he can, use some sort of like redshirt year, and that way we can see him once again for this LSU team. But you definitely got to feel it for Banks. Definitely was a scary injury. Could have been worse. We saw in the NFL level with Tua getting injured. So definitely a lot of scary injuries happening over the week. But 5 to 6 weeks, hate to see it, but definitely could have been worse. But the next hot topic, we go to Nick Saban. He quoted that Bryce Young, the quarterback for the Tide, is going to be day-to-day with shoulder injury. Do you even think that it matters if Bryce Young plays this weekend against A&M?
I think they could win without him, but obviously I think if this team's going to win the national championship, you want to have your Heisman quarterback, Bryce Young. Jalen Milroe looks pretty good. He could probably win the majority of the games left on the schedule. But you want Bryce Young sharp and ready to go by the time that Alabama has to play, for the SEC championship and then presumably the playoffs. So you got to keep them in there, but you don't want to get them hurt in a game that you don't necessarily need them to win.
Yeah, absolutely. And then our final hot topic is another injury. Is Tennessee? They lost one of their key defensive backs here, Warren Burrell, to season-ending upper body surgery. Sorry for the misspell in that one. But how will this affect Tennessee's quarterback group going into a road game against LSU's offense? It's really been struggling against the pass game.
Yeah, tough timing for sure for Tennessee, um, going on the road without one of their veterans. But next man up mentality. I mean, this Tennessee team has built depth over the last couple of years, and that's why we're seeing them look really good. I mean, look at wide receiver, stepping up for Cedric Tillman. Jalen Hyatt's been pretty good in his absence. So I think this team's going to be all right.
All right. So let's go on now to our answering questions segment. We do have actually one question from our co-host from Sports Scramble. He asks, Wade, what's your least liked sports chant? We missed you on Sports Scramble podcast. So what is your least liked sports chant?
Well, all right. I'll answer the question, and then it segues into my bonus question of the day.
Okay.
All right. Least liked sports chant? Jeez.
I could also, like Chet said, skull, and I said pretty much all of A&M's chants.
Yeah, I really don't like A&M's chant session on Friday nights.
The midnight yell.
Yeah, like,
have you seen that? Like they just like roast other teams, and then
very
the team
cultish.
just gets like it's just
Yeah,
karma.
that's up there for sure. But I'm sure something more annoying will come to my head at some point. Yeah, but I would have to say A&M is always a solid bet for being annoying.
Yes, that is right. Talk about cringy. I know we have. I don't even know if we have Texas A&M fans watching, but if we do, I mean, I bet I don't. I'm curious to see like even Texas A&M fans like do they enjoy like doing all those like wacky chants and all that, and then the midnight yell.
All right, so A&M up there. I'm gonna go ahead and hate on LSU a little bit. I really don't like it when we do the you suck thing when we're like losing or we just took the lead.
We did that against Troy whenever we were losing, but it backfired. We were saying, "Oh, we suck." So that's the only
that time that was fine.
Yeah, that was fine. But all the other ones, I mean, whenever you're beating like Rice, like you shouldn't use that.
Or like we just retook the lead against Mississippi State. Like obviously they don't suck. They were beating us.
Oh yeah, no teams suck in the SEC. That's for sure.
So that one's up there too. But that segues into my next point, my most hated athlete of the week and the season for that matter. I hate Matthew Stafford, the former Georgia Bulldog. He ruined my weekend in fantasy football in my dynasty league single-handedly because I was winning with a league high 155 points going into Monday Night Football. Yes, my opponent had a really good week, and he had, I think, 4 players playing on Monday night. So I had to sweat it out a little bit, but I was at a 95% win chance with 5 minutes to go. And then Mr. Matthew Stafford, the Georgia Bulldog himself, decides to throw an interception that was returned for a touchdown. That brought it to a 1-point game. And then what does he do on the next drive? Oh, he decides to get sacked, stripped, fumbled, and that's all she wrote, and I lose. Scoring the second highest point total in the league. So, Matthew Stafford, you're annoying.
Okay, so that is our little rant of answering questions. Definitely, I thank y'all for all your questions throughout the show here. But that will be it for the Week 6 edition of SEC Talk. We hope all of y'all enjoyed it. We're also now on Twitch. We're doing this live on the Sports Girl podcast. We're pretty much just putting out content literally on everything, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, everything that you can think of. Wade's doing TikTok, so I'm sure that he'll have more content because I know that he'll be going to bright and early for the Tennessee LSU game. Right. So definitely look out some content for Wade. But yeah, that would be it for us for Week 6. But before we let you go here, if we have any baseball fans that know that we're Braves fans, the Braves did win 2-1, so that is now 5 straight for the ATL. So number 2 seed. We were down to like 10.5 games to the Mets. So
rallied on them.
Postseason is upon us. So good luck to everyone's teams, whoever you root for in the MLB postseason. So that'll be it for week 6. Next week, we will recap this week 6 and look ahead to week 7. So that'll be it for this week's show. Hope everyone has a good rest of their night, and we'll see you back here next Tuesday on SEC Talk.